Okay, so here we are, Sueño de Vida in Ecuador, doing a little cosecha. Plátanos verdes today, staple food. It does feel good to go in and get all this food. However, I gotta tell you guys, if I were to take a whole truckload, a camioneta of this into the pueblo, I would get maybe $50. And this is 10 months of growing. Not here, I mean, if I had a whole truck. So the importance of pioneer plants like plantains and yucca is not to be underestimated. We've got a whole field of pioneers interplanted here with target species. But the important thing is not to rely on that. Hey everybody, so as I was saying, it is really important not to stop at pioneers. If you are from the latitudes of the global north and you're looking at this, you might be like, wow, this is amazing, so beautiful, look at all this lush growth. But, wow, red bananas, it's really cool. But the thing is that this is actually still a very infantile system. This was at one point, about 2.5 years ago, just this, what you see here, just grass. Just a degraded cow pasture with a single species, what they call a green desert here in the neotropics. The neotropics are not an ideal climate for regenerative agriculture with cattle. We don't have deep prairie soils. We have very poor subtropical soils. And agroforestry is really the best system for regenerating here in the neotropics. Interposing a North American or global north system like rotational grazing, it doesn't work here for many reasons. Most of the reason is because of the poverty of the soil, because we don't have winter here. We don't have a season where leaf fall decomposes and builds up layers of topsoil. So our soil, our top layer of soil is very thin. And when there's no canopy of big leaves to protect it from the pounding blitzkrieg of rain that we get for 6 months out of the year, all the nutrients in that top layer of soil simply wash out. So canopy, what I'm talking about canopy are big leaves that form like an umbrella that protect the ground from the pounding gravitational force of raindrops is really important in the neotropics. Okay, just a little aside on that. So this is an infantile agroforestry system. We've got about 14 or 15 species in here. We've got a lot of citrus trees growing. We have yucca, of course, to break up the soil, and it's a great food. Lemons, oranges. We have some timber trees growing. There's some laurel, tangeray. It's a good variety going on here, but the goal is to make it even more diverse. So what we're doing is, as these pioneers start to, as obviously right now they're big and strong, they're getting good, they're growing up, they're producing a lot of biomass, they're enabling us to fertilize our target species, which here is aroma nacional cacao, enabling us to mulch, chop and drop mulch and fertilize the ground naturally. They're doing a lot of great things for us, and we're really happy with the system as it's developing. But this is not an agroforestry system. It will be, but it's not now. And it's really important to recognize the stages of it and to understand that working with pioneers, that's why they're called pioneers, is that they are the first ones in. And they are there to help you cultivate the ground, create biomass, attract microbial growth, and do all these great things that we need. But this is by no means the end. Yucca, bananas, and plantains are still annual crops. They need to be harvested and planted continuously. So we want a system in here that's permanent. That's where the word permaculture comes from, permanent agriculture. So we need to create a system that is self-sustaining and also will produce much more calorie-dense, nutrient-rich foods beyond bananas, plantains, and yucca. Those are great foods, but it's really not a good idea to try to live on them. So our pioneer plantation here is doing great. No, we're not saying we're not happy with it, but it is not to be confused with a mature system. I'm about to take you guys down to a field that was planted about 4.5 years ago, and you'll see the difference in the maturity of some different species. Hey everybody, welcome back to Sueño de Vida in Ecuador. Here in the cloud forest, we have an agroforestry update. So in my last video, I talked a lot about pioneers and the importance of using pioneer plants to get your system going, to get your agroforestry system going. And so today I'm going to talk about what happens after pioneers. Because planting pioneer species, planting bananas and yucca is not really an agroforestry system. That's just getting it started. So here we're in a transitional place in our agroforestry system. We've still got some pioneers. Clearly we've got some big bananas still growing, and these are great because you can always use your leaves, right? Your big leaves for biomass. But now here we've got a permanent tree. We've got a target species tree. This is moringa. So it's great once you have your pioneers growing because you can always use those for biomass and chop and mulch and put that stuff down on the soil. It encourages microbial growth and it discourages the weeds from growing back around the base of the trees. So having your pioneers around is always great. But you need to think about what are you going to do, you know, after pioneers. Your pioneer phase is going to be about 2 to 3 years, especially if you're in a subtropical or tropical system because things grow quickly. So you have to have a plan in mind for what comes after pioneers. So here we've got moringa. This is an amazing species of cacao. This is bacao or macambo, a very old species of cacao. As we go further back, we have salak, arasa. Okay, we've got a lot of great timber trees going on here, some marañón, some timber. And so it's really important to keep in mind while you're moving through your pioneer phase, what are you going to be your target species? Our target species here happens to be Aroma Nacional cacao. But we're growing Aroma Nacional cacao at about a 70% to 30% ratio with our other trees like arasa, moringa, cardamom, cinnamon, nutmeg, really good high returning trees. You don't want to plant just all one thing when you decide what your target species is going to be. If it's Aroma Nacional cacao, maybe if you're in a temperate climate, it's something else. However, you do need to think about how are you going to get a return on your lands. Because I think one of the most important things going forward with agroforestry is to communicate that agroforestry is a real system. Agroforestry is a real food growing system that can bring ways to grow nutrient dense perennial crops that can really help feed the world. Because if we're just growing trees for the sake of trees because we love trees, you can't talk about that like with farmers, especially in the global south and the neotropics who are poor, who are relying on harvest. So it's really up to us who are pioneering and fostering these agroforestry systems, starting with pioneers and moving our way up, to also create systems where you could see an increase in returns as your perennial crops get established. So for example, maybe it's timber, and maybe you're starting with balsa, and then from balsa you're moving up to teak. And then from teak, perhaps you're moving into something like ebony or rosewood that is even very rare and becoming endangered. If you're starting with bananas, moving from bananas to Aroma Nacional cacao, but also growing high yielding returns on spices in the undergrowth, things like cardamom, turmeric, and ginger, galangal, okay? So it's very important to think in terms of realistic systems that are going to bring a return on the land that can be adopted by farmers everywhere, but especially in developing areas where they're relying on getting from one harvest to the next just to support their families. Not everybody is in a position to just do agroforestry for the sake of agroforestry. Agroforestry needs to have a return, it needs to have an economic return, while it's building this amazing diverse ecosystem that you now see behind me that was once all just a compacted grassy pasture.